Here we are with our revamped and revitalized look on how to play each of the elements in Empires of Aether. This video is going to pertain to the Sand element, one of the most powerful late-game nations in the game. Your opponent is going to want to stall you from getting there. And if you've got two deserts in your corner, well, then you're going to achieve that late game fairly early on, which is why it's going to get banned, typically, when you see two deserts in the corner. But if it is able to sneak through, well, then good game. You've won. But the Sand Nation, of course, is very playable with just one desert in this corner. It just provides a little more maneuverability for your opponents to play around you. And you have to manage your resources very effectively because you need to get to Tier 3 in order to really contend for the win, which means you need to manage your other resources on deflecting early game aggressors. Let's take a look at Sand's abilities and how they tackle the board. Taking a look at the Sand Nation abilities, Sand is in such an interesting place. Naturally, it wants deserts, which are typically very, very cheap tiles. They don't produce that much resources. Sand thrives on them. They get an extra 2 food from each of these owned, and additionally, most of their big card passives give them effects based on how many deserts they have. For example, once they own 3, they get 5 food and 5 BM immediately injected into their economy for a great economic surplus. Once they own 5, one of those is converted to an oasis, an economic powerhouse tile. And then once they hit Tier 3, they can move through deserts without using their movement. And of course, with Sand, naturally, we had to have the pyramids involved. And with that, there's got to be mummies in there somewhere. So Sand is a late-game nation. But that being said, when it's got 2 deserts in its corner, it finds the late game by turn 4 or turn 5 when it's hitting Tier 3. So it can spike incredibly quickly. If you see 2 deserts in a corner and you're in the 20-20 position, try not banning Sand. Because if the other 3 players don't ban it, they will find themselves figuring out that was something to never repeat again in doing so. So if you get 2 deserts in your corner and Sand is not banned, well, enjoy your win if you actually get the Sand element. And their abilities are dynamic, depending on what your playstyle is. I would say, typically, you're going to have 1 desert in your corner when you get the Sand Nation, and that's totally fine. That's just going to delay you a turn or 2 for you to get to Tier 3 by turn 5, turn 6. Totally fine. You can still make it happen. And I do think Sand has some aggressive implications. The Tusken Raider build, if you will. That's what my personal coining of it is. And of course, with all of these abilities, we've got a lot of Star Wars puns in here. Are you an angel? But not like you, you're everything soft. Let's take a look at what your primary abilities are going to be. Well, let's get an extra desert here. Because remember, we want to get to these very crucial 3 and 5 desert checkpoints in our game in order to get to the mid-game and late game as fast as possible. So we want to get a free desert. And in Tier 2, it's very hard to not take a double desert. The only instance where we wouldn't take both of these cards is in the situation where we might take our monument. Our monument is very interesting where it converts every tile adjacent to that star tile that we put this monument on into deserts. That's a lot of sand there. So we might not need 3 extra deserts if we're going to go for the monument. However, if I got deserts already next to me in my corner, especially if I've got 2 deserts in my corner, I don't need this monument. This monument is necessary for if I don't have much sand in my corner or any sand at all. But if you don't have any deserts in your corner, then why are you picking sand, really? There's got to be better options there. And so sand is susceptible in the early game. It is. It's certainly strongest once it gets to Tier 3. But let's take a look at our abilities that get us there. If we are in an early turn position and we're trying to play a late game economic powerhouse nation, well then Aryan Angel is going to help you bridge the gap here, starting with an extra 3-3. I think this is significantly better when played from the 13-13 position, but it is still really, really good when you're going 10-10. But I like going 10-10 with Sand because if I've got deserts adjacent to my capital, that's a super cheap tile. So the lack of resource in the beginning is not that much of a big deal. I really, really like getting some free advantage cards out of the gate, drawing 3, discarding any and outs, and I get to keep 2. That's a really good chance that I get something that's going to really help me in the mid to late game. Then we've got some extra defensive fortifications on tiles or a really, really defensive card. However, I have to activate it on my turn. I don't get to activate it on an opponent's turn, so you do have to time this appropriately. The safer card is going to be It's Rough. I would say these are your 3 standard Tier 1s, not considering turn position. But if you're 10-10 or 13-13, can't blame you for going with Are You an Angel? And I don't think it matters which of these 3 here you're going to neglect, but you're always going to take a free desert. Absolutely, right? And so with this extra food production from Sand, you can actually get a lot of soldiers, which is why I think there are aggressive implications. And so your tier 2, you can go a couple different directions. You've got Haboobs, which is good offensively or defensively. You're going to eliminate an army and 2 defensive fortifications on a tile, but it must be adjacent to a desert, so you do have to plan around that, kind of similarly to Poison's game or Nature's game. But then after that, you've got a couple of utility cards. Mirage is going to double the strength of any soldiers that are attacking. Of course, some soldiers that aren't actually there, but if your opponents are feeling the pain. But I love Locust. If you've got food-heavy nations that are putting a lot of soldiers out there, this will force them to pay 2 food for each soldier at the end of this turn. If you're in the 20-20 position, you're the last player in the cycle, you pop this, there's no counter to it. They're either going to have 0 food at the start of next turn, or they're going to lose soldiers in addition to that. So it's a very powerful card, and I love using it aggressively. If I'm attacking someone, I just cripple their food economy, and I just keep going at them. And so tier 2, if I'm going with a Tusken Raider build, I personally love these 3. Super aggressive. It is an all-in type of strategy. It is not the safest play, but if you're going against a weaker opponent, one that thrives on having defensive fortifications, then this is a very, very powerful play. So I would say these are your main tier 2s with Locust and Mirage as a flex spot. Mirage is obviously safer. If no one's going to aggress upon you, then Mirage you can use both offensively or against boss tiles. Very, very powerful there. I personally am going to go for Locust most of the time. And then we get to tier 3, where they're super fun. And we didn't even mention Moisture Farms. Moisture Farms is a super powerful card. Just a great economic card. If you're going to go for a slower build, more of a 50-50 type win here, then Moisture Farms can't argue with that. Really, any of these cards, right over here, these 4 cards, I don't think there's any 2-card combination that's bad with those. But we get to tier 3, which is what you're playing for with Sand. They're super fun. Really powerful once you get to this. They're quest, if you're going to go for that, but you don't always need it. Especially if you've got 2 deserts in your corner, you don't need your quests. You're going to win. Own 5 deserts, have 6 armies, with your general, worshipping your general, add a pyramid in order to acquire 1 win condition. There's no point in building pyramids until we get to tier 3. They cost 5 building materials, and they can go on any desert tile that we own. But what are these pyramids for? Well, yes, they are for the quest, but more importantly, they're for our mummification passive. Any soldier, friend or foe, that perishes or slain or killed by weather effects or monsters, whatever it is, any unit that dies within 2 tiles of a pyramid is resurrected to our side at the start of your turn. So you're getting a lot of dudes out there, which is going to help you accomplish your quest. And because you have an enhanced movement through deserts, once you get to tier 3, you can accomplish your quest pretty well. But on top of that, you've got a lot of dudes. So what are our other choices for tier 3? Well, take your pick. You got the Pharaoh, which is going to help you get to that 50-50 win condition. If your general's on a desert at the end of the turn, you get 5 food and 5 BM. And also any tile that you claim with your general, whether it's combat-wise or purchase, you can turn it into a desert tile. Buried Alive, though, incredibly powerful. It can turn any tile neutral. It is the only card in this game that has this effect. You can take any tile. If it's got 10 armies and 16 defensive fortifications on it, it doesn't matter. You eliminate all of it. It turns it into a desert, and it becomes neutral. In fact, the only way to counter this is if it was already a desert in the first place, or if it's the temple, that sort of thing. So there's not too many counters to this. This is a really, really big finisher play. Sand is trying to get to tier 3 where they can use these ultra powerful abilities. And those are your mummies, and I hope you have fun with Sand.